Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Joe DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Up first this week for our 2 games is 2000's Marvel vs. Capcom 2 New Age of Heroes, the iconic 3-on-3 tag team fighting game that was a competitive tournament mainstay with its roster of 56 playable characters.
Following that is the sequel to the fighting game that brought the casts of Persona 3 and 4 together for the first time to duke it out Arxis style, 2013's Persona 4 Arena Ultimax.
So yeah, 2 fighting games. No reason. None at all.
Definitely not something that was supposed to happen this week and then ended up not happening because of allegations.
Spiraling apart in a variety of ways. Oh boy. But yeah, it was good to talk about fighting games, kind of like we did. Oh my gosh, was it last year that we did Dragon Ball Fighters and Street Fighter V? Has it already been a year since that episode?
That was for Evo last year, yeah.
Oh my gosh. How is this year going by so quickly in such a chaotic time? Oh wow. Okay, so with that kind of rattling my brain right now, Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
I'm doing pretty alright. I beat Symphony of the Night, finally.
Nice.
Finished it last week, and it was... I have a few problems with it, but overall, it's a pretty good game. Like, it still holds up surprisingly well in the grand scheme of things. And expect to hear more about video games from me, because I bit the bullet and signed up for Game Pass on PC.
Yeah.
So, just gonna go ahead and start giving that a shot, because it's just such a good value. How could you not?
It really is. I have it, and I need to use it a lot more. Because I've been playing PS4 a lot. Specifically, Ghost of Tsushima. And I am right before the climactic battle in Act 2, where it's called The Fate of Tsushima, and my progression for Jin Sakai, the main character, nearly everything is, completed, leveled up, it's like 90% there to being fully maxed out. So you'd think it would be close to the end of the game, but there's a whole third section of the map still to go. And it feels like it's building up to this climactic showdown. I'm like, well, obviously it's going to end here, or something's got to change, because there's seemingly more of this map still to go. And some side quests with your side characters still have a couple more chapters left to them. So there's still more game, but my character progression, I don't know if it's because I'm playing on easy, I'm just about fully maxed out. Loving it, great game. Found out that there is a Sly Cooper related trophy. So we were wondering if there's an Easter egg in there. There absolutely is. Good stuff there. I'm really, really enjoying it.
I haven't started it yet. Again, it's sitting in my PS4. I just haven't brought myself to start it yet, but I have seen my roommate Ben play it quite a bit. He seems to be having a good time. I think he's still in Act 1, but I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of meat in Act 1. It's definitely a game where if you like open world stuff where you check all the question marks and side quests and boxes before the main quest, you can get a lot done. I mean, a lot done. Like, I got my sword all the way leveled up before I really started Act 2's main story quest. So there's a lot there for open world game fans. Well, as far as headlines from our composers that we've talked about, and what are these different composers still doing today? What are they working on? Got a few here. There was the Nintendo Direct Mini. Yeah, that was this week. It feels like certainly longer ago, as far as time of recording here. But a couple stories were talked about that related to composers. First of all, being Cadence of Hyrule, getting a few some DLC packs, ultimately leading to a big physical release of everything combined together. And of course, that's Danny Baranowski doing the music on that. But then I think the biggest story overall was the return of Shin Megami Tensei news on Nintendo Switch. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne is getting a remastered version in spring 2021. That's for Switch and PS4. But then Shin Megami Tensei 5 comes out of hiding after a few years. I mean, that was the Switch reveal event in January 2017, and now we're finally hearing something about it again. No word if Shoji Meguro is doing the music for the Switch exclusive Shin Megami Tensei 5, but I'm pretty sure he did music on Nocturne. So there's that little tie-in for that composer.
There you go. It should be noted also the Cadence of Hyrule DLC also comes with, one of them is a music pack by a bunch of other artists. I don't think we've talked about any of them, but one is Family Jewels, who we have used, I believe, in the past for transitions.
Yes, definitely have.
And another that I can think of off the top of my head is Chipzel, who will actually come up in a few weeks in another planned episode. So both very good artists. Very much looking forward to that DLC. Definitely going to buy it. Cadence of Hyrule is great. Meanwhile, Team Reptile, who are the developers behind Lethal League Blaze, which is another game that will come up in the coming months, because I'm going to talk about it and it's going to be cool. They announced the game Bomb Rush Cyberfunk, which is basically them saying, fine, if Sega's not going to make a Jet Set Radio, then we will make a Jet Set Radio. And under sound card requirements on Steam, it simply says Naganuma compatible. So Hideki Naganuma is attached to the project. Very excited for that.
That is definitely very exciting. Yeah, need more music like that in video games. The other big conference of the week in these extended E3 times because of COVID, the Xbox Games Showcase. And several composers we've talked about mentioned there. First of all, Peter McConnell got some screen time in the Psychonauts 2 segment where Jack Black was talking with, Peter, he composed the song that I'm going to sing. Whoa! You also had Tetris Effect Connected, which is going to be the, for now, Xbox exclusive game that has multiplayer before the multiplayer mode comes to all the other versions in summer 2021. Of course, that's Hidelic Noboru Muto with the composer we've talked about before with Tetris Effect. One of the biggest, I think, composer news stories of the week is the announcement that Gareth Coker, who composed Ori and the Blind Forest and Ori Will of the Wisps, is composing Halo Infinite alongside Curtis Schweitzer. That's a huge get, and really actually makes me excited for that soundtrack, because Gareth Coker does great work. And then also a reminder, because Everwild, Rare's new game, was also shown off, it's been announced that Robin Beanland is working on that project.
Feels so good that Rare gets to make real games now.
Yeah, and not connect sports stuff.
Like, I've heard great things about Sea of Thieves. I'm going to give it a shot on Game Pass, and Everwild looks great, and thank God Rare gets to make real video games now.
I mean, we still got to see what Everwild actually is.
That's true.
Some multiplayer, artistic, nature-based concept, but we'll give it time.
And last but not least, Necro Barista, which is a visual novel with music by Kevin Pankin, is now out on PC. I actually just bought it right before we started recording and installed it and everything. It's like a visual novel that's using like 3D graphics and looks like it's doing a lot of stylish UI stuff. And I mean, you tell me that Kevin Pankin's doing the soundtrack, I was going to buy it anyways. So, hey.
There you go. Maybe we'll hear feedback from you on it in the coming weeks. But for now, let's get to talking about fighting games. And what better place to start than with one of the most influential fighting games out there? There are several games you could fit in that category. But as far as the early 2000s, no better game for fighting games than Marvel vs. Capcom 2, New Age of Heroes. We've talked about the versus Capcom games before. If you want the full history rundown, we've talked about Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 on episode 43 of the show. Then also Tatsunoko vs. Capcom on episode 74. But Marvel vs. Capcom 2, New Age of Heroes, was released first in arcades in Japan on February 24th, 2000. It came to consoles first via the Sega Dreamcast, started in Japan on March 30th, 2000, so about a month after its arcade release. North America got the game on Dreamcast on June 29th, 2000, and Europe on July 16th, 2000. Then a PS2 and Xbox version was ported over, essentially. PlayStation 2 arrived in North America on November 19th, 2002, and Xbox in North America on March 27th, 2003. Then you got an Xbox 360 and PS3 version through their digital arcade, Xbox Live Arcade. That was worldwide release on July 29th, 2009. PlayStation Network got a worldwide release on August 13th, 2009. So that was the digital release on the arcade network platforms for PS3, Xbox 360. iOS has a version of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which is something I did not know. Worldwide release there on April 25th, 2012. Now, unfortunately, the Xbox 360, PS3, and iOS versions have all been delisted from sale because of the supposed expiration of Capcom's contracts with Marvel Comics in December 2013. When you're talking about where may be the best place to play Marvel vs. Capcom 2, PS2 maybe? Maybe. I don't think you're going to have a Dreamcast floating around. It's a pretty tough game to get a hold of these days. The game was originally developed by Capcom. Backbone Entertainment handled the 360 and PS3 port. It is published by Capcom, except for the European Dreamcast version, which is published by Virgin Interactive. Marvel vs. Capcom 2, it's a 2D fighting game with 3v3 tag teams. It's like the foundation of that kind of game. So when we talk about games like Marvel vs. Capcom 3, like Dragon Ball FighterZ, they all owe it to MVC2 here.
That's what makes it the biggest bummer that it's not really available anywhere anymore, is because it is legitimately a piece of history for that genre. I would say that MVC2 is probably equal to Street Fighter 2 in terms of what it did for revolutionizing the fighting game genre.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. Street Fighter 2 was essential in establishing the genre, but for that next generation, it's absolutely Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
So the fact that you can't get it anywhere is a huge bummer, and is just another one of those things of man, trademark law sucks in a way. It's broken.
And digital licenses and all that. I feel like I have the game on my Xbox 360 still sitting there. I mean, I could play if I wanted to, but if people wanted to go out and play it today, it's not like they're oh yeah, in a PC version. No, it's just kind of a logistical legal mess. There isn't much of a story to Marvel vs. Capcom 2, honestly. As far as an arcade mode goes, you face 7 computer AI controlled teams before you face the final boss, Abyss. He has 3 different forms, and you don't even really get a specialized ending based on the team that you pull together. It's very, very bare bones on that front. Not like Marvel vs. Capcom 3, where they tried to put up some facade of 2 worlds are connecting and big cinematic way. No. It's gameplay first here, honestly. So, Joe, that being said, what are our experiences with Marvel vs. Capcom 2?
I've never touched it. Ever. I've never played this game. I actually barely know anything about it outside of... So the things I know about Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Sentinel, Storm, Magneto are the only characters you're allowed to play, or you lose. Is that right? That's the team, right?
Something like that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know Curly Mustache because of Deadpool in 3.
All the different Yipes things. Scoops Haagen-Dazs. You've got that Mango Sentinel. Yeah, that's part of fighting game lore.
I know nothing else about the game except that it was the big 3v3, and I sort of know the lineage of it from X-Men vs. Street Fighter and all that. But yeah, I've never played it, largely because it is unavailable anywhere. I have a lot more experience with 3. The thing that strikes me the most is this game does not feel like it came out in 2000. Because you say 2000 and my brain's what? No, that's a mid-90s game.
Yeah.
A game this establishing doesn't feel like it only came out 20 years ago. And yet at the same time, this game came out 20 years ago, which is why originally before the Troubles and I don't just mean their specific troubles, I mean the world's troubles, Evo was going to run an invitational of MVC2 because it is the 20th anniversary of the game being released. So it's just weird to think about a game this influential coming out that recently, and yet at the same time, that was 20 years ago.
Now, this being a show about soundtracks, and when we do delve into the history of development, kind of teaching what we learned about the games while researching, how much do you know about the soundtrack to Marvel vs. Capcom 2?
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
This was my first time hearing pretty much all of these songs.
Okay. Let's just say it has a very controversial soundtrack. One that I love, but I am in the gross minority on that one.
I see.
I realized that I was bad at fighting games when I tried Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Wait, I think I have... Oh, now I have played it once, because I think I found an arcade cabinet at the local big arcade around here that closed like a year ago, unfortunately. But like they had a... okay, yes, I have played 2 seconds. I played some of Servbot.
Oh, there you go.
That was the character I played as.
So when I got my Xbox 360, I think it was around end of October 2008. So it was within a year that like, oh, this iconic fighting game is going to be released digitally on Xbox Live Arcade. And I lived with a bunch of fighting game fans at the time. Yeah, I got it and I wanted to try it. And it was like, oh, yeah, like I feel like I messed around in Street Fighter 2 before that. And it's simple, right? But the action in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is unlike anything else. That's why it's that next step. And it's like, yep, I am bad at 2D fighting games. However, you can't deny its vast range of characters. Granted, only a few, you're right, much more competitive than all the others, but the amount of characters is very impressive. And then the 3v3 team combination possibilities, that's super, super cool.
Wasn't it until Ultimate, it held the record for biggest fighting game roster?
I think you're right, unless you're counting something like Mugen, where it's like, all fan done.
I think officially... I believe that's right. I think before Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 held the world record for biggest roster.
It sounds about right, and it's an impressive one for sure. But learning about the actual development of the game was announced on December 1st, 1999, saying that we're making a sequel to Marvel vs. Capcom. It's the first game in that Marvel vs. Capcom series to use 2D sprites over 3D backgrounds. And I feel like we focus so much on like, oh, it's the 2D sprites and that gives you the mid-90s impression, but there were 3D backgrounds in that game and I had that juxtaposition there. The Japanese release of the game was very different because you had the whole arcade setup in Japan. Because arcade released first and then the Dreamcast version about a month later, the Japanese versions of this game, they were compatible in a way with each other. You had the Dreamcast VMU, which is the visual memory unit that you could put in your controller, and then you could take it with you, go do other things elsewhere, and then bring it back to the Dreamcast. A pretty big, unique thing for the system at the time, especially for late 90s, early 2000s.
We've only talked about 2 Dreamcast games on this whole show, haven't we?
I think you're right.
Sonic Adventure and Jet Set Radio, I think, are it.
Yeah, Sonic Adventure 2, Jet Set Radio. Yeah, you're right. So this would be the third. And with this one, taking the VMU, players could take that to the arcade in Japan. They could exchange data, could earn them experience points, which you could bring back and then use to unlock new characters, stages, costume colors in the home version. Play in the arcade, have your progress be brought back to your home version. It also featured online play through Dreamcast's Match service, but all of these features did not make it out of Japan to the North American and international versions of the Dreamcast game. It's a neat idea, though. I think it's really unique for the time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about the VMU. I know that it was weird, but this seems like the most interesting sort of use for it that I've yet heard.
We mentioned the roster of playable fighters. Yes, 56 playable characters. On the Marvel side of things, there is Blackheart, Cable, Captain America, Colossus, Cyclops, Doctor Doom, Gambit, Hulk, Iceman, Iron Man, Juggernaut, Magneto, Marrow, Omega Red, Psylocke, Rogue, Sabretooth, Sentinel, Shumagarath, Silver Samurai, Spider-Man, Spiral, Storm, Thanos, Venom, War Machine, and Wolverine. There's a regular Wolverine with his adamantium claws, and then there's also Bone Claws Wolverine as a separate character. Why? I don't know. On the Capcom side of things, there's Akuma, Amingo, Anacharis, BB Hood, Cammy White, Captain Commando, Charlie Nash, Chun-Li, Dan Hibiki, Dhalsim, Felicia, Guile, Hayato Kanzaki, Jill Valentine, Jin Saotome, Ken Masters, M. Bison, Mega Man, Morgan Ainsland, Roll, Ruby Heart, Ryu, Sakura Kasugano, Servbot, Sun, Strider Hiryu, Tronbon, and Zangief. So, I learned that Amingo and Ruby Heart are completely original characters to Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I don't think you'd see that really in any other crossover fighter like this, where it's like, yeah, we're going to make up new characters just for this. So if you're wondering during that list, like, oh, what are those characters and what are they from? Same thing with Sun. Sun is the newly created character that is the granddaughter of the protagonist of a 1984 Capcom arcade game. So she's also a new character for this game, but at least she had some Capcom quote-unquote lineage to her.
See, I knew Ruby Heart was an original character. I did not know Amingo and Sun were, nor had I heard of them. But I knew of Ruby Heart.
Yeah, so there is that. The PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 ports of the game, as I mentioned, developed by Backbone Entertainment, they had previously worked with Capcom on Super Street Fighter II Turbo HD Remix. They had the game built using the original Dreamcast version's code base, and there was no Wii version, apparently because of licensing restrictions, as well as, oh yeah, I forgot about this, WiiWare's file size limits. What a good digital distribution method for the time, Nintendo.
May it rest in peace.
Thank goodness. Oh, those WAD files, my goodness. The Dreamcast version was reviewed very well at the time with a Metacritic average of 90. The game was praised for its frantic gameplay style, detailed backdrops and visuals, the enormous cast of playable characters, and a new control scheme, as well as the addition of 3v3 combat. However, the big criticism for not only the Dreamcast version, but also the PS2 and Xbox versions, was their lack of online support. When the game made it out of Japan, yet no online play. You could probably do like PS2, you could do like modem connections over the same network, but there was no Xbox Live multiplayer for this game. Oddly enough, Aaron Bolding of IGN gave the Xbox version a 3.9 out of 10 for Capcom failing to meet their promise of delivering that Xbox Live gameplay. When the game came to Xbox 360 and PS3 with those versions, online multiplayer was available. However, when talking about the soundtrack, mentioning how it's a controversial soundtrack, the reviews slammed the soundtrack because, quote, across all platforms, many reviewers cited the jazz-inspired soundtrack as the game's biggest flaw. Jeremy Dunham of IGN, who he went on to establish Psyonix, the guys who make Rocket League, Jeremy Dunham described the music as, quote, plain god-awful, stating that the, quote, jazzy lounge lizard music and snappy beats did not fit the action in the slightest. Martin Taylor of Eurogamer expressed his disappointment that the game's visual flair was backed by a, quote, a horrific, lift music-oriented soundtrack and low-quality sound effects. Game Revolution shared the sentiment, declaring it as, quote, some of the lamest music that you've ever heard.
Wow.
So, like, the soundtrack was bombed in reviews at the time. So here's the thing. My opinion on the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 soundtrack. Does it fit the intense fighting game action? No. However, yeah, it's jazzy. There's some lounge, there's some upbeat jazz. The jazz is great. And I think some of the MIDIs for the time actually sound really good. The sound effects, like the punches and kicks, yeah, I agree. Not great. However, I think it's a great soundtrack. It is horribly misplaced, though. I kind of like how off-kilter it is, but I'm in the gross minority there. But I don't think you can say, like, it's god-awful, it's some of the lamest music. Like, no, it just doesn't match what you're expecting from a fighting game. The jazz, however, is great, in my opinion. But that aside, with weird critiques on the game's music, I couldn't really find any awards at the time. 2000 was a different time for Game Awards. Didn't really have any noted for, like, this magazine did this. Nor could I find Dreamcast sales figures. But apparently the PS3 and 360 versions sold 1.4 million units before their removal. Yeah, as we said, it's one of the most well-regarded fighting games of all time. It was a mainstay at the Evolution Tournament Series, EVO, until 2010. And this was especially when, new fighting games weren't really being made until 2008 with Street Fighter 4 and kicking things back up. 2011, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 had just come out in February, so that was replaced then. But a big mainstay for about 10 years. And as you mentioned, it was meant to be at EVO 2020 for its 20th anniversary before everything happened. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 released in 2011, as we mentioned. Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 later that year in 2011, as we covered on the show. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was made in 2017. One of those things where like, the gameplay is really good, but you can tell that Capcom didn't get a lot of money to make the game, and some things look rough. Some people speculate if a Marvel vs. Capcom 4 is in the works. Hard to say.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, I part of me kind of hopes, because it's always fun to follow, new fighting games like that, but after how Infinite did, may need a few more years, and Disney trying to figure out however they're going to handle Marvel properties and licensing and things like that.
Yeah, I cannot see Disney, and maybe in a few years, I don't know, I can't see Disney being like, it's been a couple of years, why didn't you give another shot to it? Everything I know about Disney makes me think that they would actually say, no, it did bad. It was a disaster. No. But then again, EA still has the Star Wars license. So what do I know?
Yeah, who knows there. Now, the game was composed by two men, one of them being Tetsuya Shibata, who we've covered on the show before for his work on Devil May Cry 3. The other composer is Mitsuhiko Takano. And Mitsuhiko Takano was born on February 8th, 1971 in Japan. I only found that sourced one place, but I'm going to count it because I was born on February 8th, and that's the first time I've seen any of these composers match that date. So, hey, shouts out to Takano. He was originally employed by Tosei in 1991, where he worked on a few SNES titles before becoming affiliated with Winkysoft. Never heard of Winkysoft, but okay. He composed music for the 1996 PlayStation title Shin Super Robot Tyson there. He joined Capcom sometime afterwards, and he's been with them ever since. Composed several games, then became a sound manager there since 2009. He is the drummer on the band Rockmen, with previously covered Masahiro Aoki on guitar. And we haven't covered Yasumasa Kitajoh before, but I'm sure that's a name that'll come up eventually. And he plays bass in that group, Rockmen. Since 2011, Mitsuhiko Takano operates Wombat Cafe, a website and Twitter page dedicated to the interest of wombats that he has. Cool. Great.
Nice.
Love random bits like that where you find on fan wikis and things like that. He currently lives in Asahi Prefecture in Osaka, Japan. So the games that he is composed on, they include Super Tetris 2 plus Bombliss, Dragon Ball Z Hyperdimension, Shin Super Robot Taisen, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind, Gotcha Force, Resident Evil Outbreak and Resident Evil Deadly Silence, The Legend of Zelda, The Minish Cap. There you go. Capcom made game. That's a neat little one in his Minish Cap. Mega Man Battle Network 5, Double Team DS, and Mega Man Star Force, Leo, Pegasus, and Dragon. Those are among his notable composing efforts. As far as being an arranger, though, he translated Mega Man X series music to the Game Boy for Mega Man Extreme 2 in 2001. And if anywhere, it seemed to be a couple places noted that he is the arranger on Hyper Street Fighter 2, or at least like its iconic FM Town / 3DO version, the arrangement. So basically, the Guiles theme that goes with everything, the good one, not like the original Super Street Fighter 2 version, but like the one that is properly used with the meme, that's apparently his arrangement. So I thought that was pretty neat to come across. As far as his management efforts, he was a sound manager for Resident Evil 5, Monster Hunter Tri, Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, and he was the cinematic sound coordinator on Devil May Cry 5 last year. So yes, Tetsuya Shibata, Mitsuhiko Takano, they were free to compose in any genre when trying to find notes about the historical development research for this jazzy soundtrack. And yeah, they picked jazz because they weren't bound by any previous games in the Versus series. If anything, Shibata had a bit more to say about composing for the game than Takano did. The 360 and PS3 ports apparently wanted to get away from this soundtrack, though. It must have been, after hearing all the feedback. So they added independent music volume controls as well as the support of custom soundtracks. In fact, Capcom even offered a free downloadable hip-hop mixtape as an alternative soundtrack for the game. You think they're ashamed of it or something? It kind of seems like it.
Jeez.
I don't know why, though, because I love this soundtrack. I am so excited to talk about the 5 critical tracks here for Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Let's get right into it. First critical track, this is Player Select.
I wanna take you for a ride. 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 I wanna take you for a ride.
Look, it's legendary for a reason. Also known as, I want to take you for a ride. I wonder why.
Can't imagine.
This is actually the best. I think if there's one song that you have to pull away from this game, this is the iconic one. So much so that this song got 3 remixes in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. It's definitely iconic to the series overall. But yes, it is a sample, an audio sample vocal that gets these little, brass and jazzy sax behind it, and a little 8-second loop. There it goes. I love it though. It's tops.
And it's the only song on the soundtrack I had ever heard before because it is in 3 so many times in so many different versions. It's a bit short. Yeah, 8 seconds is a hell of a loop. But yeah, it's really good even for being such a short loop.
But then again, you don't need too much when you're especially if you're familiar with the game and you know what team you're going to pick out and you're flipping through. You don't need that much. So I think it kind of gets you in that jazzy vibe. But then it's the stages where the jazz really shines. Let's get to number 2 on the Critical 5. This is Carnival Stage. Sometimes you get this known as amusement park or theme park. Carnival Stage, I think, kind of makes it pretty concise here, though. probably the most high intensity stage song. Like, it gets right into it. And I feel like it also gets the most recognition as far as like gaming YouTubers using it as music in different places. It wouldn't surprise me if you're like a fan of video game music, you've heard this before and you're like, oh, I didn't know that was from this. Yeah, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I think the MIDIs sound really good, especially for the year 2000. Some of the effects processing on the guitar in particular, it's a little it's a little muddy, but that brass is so on point and it sounds so good. But yeah, wow, great energy to this one.
It's really weird that the brass is the really good MIDI, because that's usually the opposite way. Because I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show before. All horn MIDIs suck, all of them. There's no, like, there are good ones, obviously. You heard one in the clip there. But, like, those are so hard to find. A majority of horn MIDIs or any brass MIDIs whatsoever are garbage. Kill this to the Dragon Quest music in Smash. You'll hear the worst horn MIDIs that could possibly exist.
Also, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire on the Game Boy Advance.
That's also up there, yeah. And boy, that soundtrack uses those a lot. So it's really interesting that that's the standout MIDI of this song in general. Overall, I think I agree that, like, this is a good soundtrack, but it feels like a stepping stone to Skullgirls.
Okay.
Almost. Because Skullgirls also goes the route of, like, it's a jazz soundtrack, but nobody complained about that one. This is the soundtrack of having a good time, which, I mean, should fit fighting games, honestly, but I don't know.
Sometimes, though, you got to get into a little more, like a soulful songs with the jazz here. And that's the case with number 3 on the Critical 5. This is River Stage.
Nobody to dry your eyes, drive me crazy, but I won't let you go, excite me.
I should stress, titles like this have blank stage, this stage, player select, because there is no official soundtrack release for Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Kills me. You know what also pains me? I could not find out who the vocalist is because of that. Couldn't find credits with the vocalist, which is a shame. This is my favorite song on the soundtrack, and this vocalist, she kills it here. It's so good. There's nobody to dry your eyes. Like, oh man, just going on with that. You got this tight bass and drum backing going with it. And then it's followed by, again, great brass midis. The Barry sax. Love when Barry sax shows up, especially in jazz pieces. And oh my god, yeah, the pitch bending at the end of the clip. Oh, love this song so much. And yeah, if we've got any people out there who know who the vocalist is, please let me know. I want to know.
It's also it could be a sample.
Possibly.
But who knows? I don't know. This feels like it's it feels a bit long to be a sample, but at the same time, like, all of Naganuma's work is right over there, and all of that is samples. So I have no idea. It could be a sample. It could be none of the Versus games have gotten official soundtrack releases as far as I'm aware, which is a shame.
Again, probably because of licensing and all that.
Yeah.
Anyway, like, this song really stands out to me as far as just like, yeah, this is my jam. Again, is it for Marvel vs. Capcom? Not necessarily, but definitely something I wanted to bring up on the show, for sure. Number 4 on the Critical 5. Let's go over to Clock Tower Stage.
So obviously Clock Tower was a horror game made by...
Yeah, and not so scary, this one.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like, they took it in a weird direction. I don't know. This wasn't even a Capcom game. I don't even know why it was in there.
The first three pieces here on the Critical 5 were composed by Mitsuhiko Takano, according to fan wikis and how they split them up. I don't know how they did that, but I'll take it for now. But this one apparently composed by Tetsuya Shibata, and it's piano jazz. Yes. The best part of this piece, though, I think, is how clean the electric guitar solo sounds. Like, some electric guitars, like, yeah, you'll get like a little too grungy, a little too processed. But this one is nice and clean, and it fits the solo so well. This is just so loungy, and I feel like it's the most typical jazz piece in a way, just because of like how it's passing the solo riffing off between different instruments, and it's so cool. Yeah, absolutely does not fit the the name of Clock Tower being a classic horror game, but for the environment, when you got some that background going with, you know, the gears and all that, yeah, it's pretty neat.
This is definitely my favorite on the Critical 5, like with a bullet for sure. Sounds great.
I could see that. Yeah, it's a great one, and it fights with River Stage for mine, but I just love those vocals, and I want to know. Oh man, I just channeled like a Regis Philbin there. Rest in peace, Regis Philbin. Holy cow, that was not intentional, but wow. Yeah, we're in a weird time, 2020. Here we go. Number 5 on the Critical 5. Let's wrap things up with Training Mode. Oh, you better get used to hearing this one. If you're hearing it on loop, you're trying to perfect that combo. I think the instrumentation sounds overall pretty similar to Player Select. I Want to Take You for a Ride. You got some of those keys doing work, but it's the xylophone that is the star of the show, especially in the clip. Yeah, it's just da-da-da-da-da-da-da, like that kind of rhythm. You got to get used to hearing that one, especially. Just the motif is pretty common in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 as a whole. But I feel like, especially when people remember this game and they're trying to get into the lab, essentially, this is one that pops up a lot.
I feel like I've heard this song somewhere, but where that would be, I don't know. Maybe something in Wooly Madden's content? I don't know.
Maybe.
Huh.
Entirely possible. On the cutting room floor, we got a couple more stages. This one is composed by Tetsuya Shibata. The first one here, Cave Stage. It's jazzy swing. What can I say? It sounds so good. It's not like Clock Tower good, so that's kind of why it's here on the cutting room floor. But yeah, you got a heartache. Like it's such a good swing piece. A really tight instrument set. I'm a fan of this one. I like it a lot. The other one is also a really good one with vocals. I like this one more though. This is Swamp Stage. I don't know, it kind of feels a little bit Latin inspired in a way. But you got all the swing your body, da 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 da. Such a great groove. I think, again, the brass overall the brass lineup, but really the brass midis really shine here. They bring it strong in the chorus. And then it's the keys and the guitars and the really driving those backing chords. This one was so close to making the Critical 5, but I feel like it's a really strong contender here on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, I really like this song. I think it lends even more to my theory that the River Stage vocalist might be a sample, because this is obvious. Swing Your Body's obviously a sample. Like, that's a sample. Though it does kind of sound like it could be the same vocalist, maybe? I don't know. Like, just heavily processed?
That's the thing. It does sound like across I Want to Take You for a Ride, all that. It does sound the same vocalist. You're right, but where'd they pull it from? I don't know. Because, like, you get other different songs out there that use the I Want to Take You for a Ride sample, but then you think, like, well, are they just pulling it from Marvel vs. Capcom? Like, makes you wonder.
Yeah. An interesting mystery. Solve it for us, Internet.
Yeah, we tried to research, but if you got knowledge out there, please let us know. So, what will I never forget about this game? It's probably the greatest soundtrack mismatch in video game history. I could not believe how loathed and reviled it was in reviews at the time. Kind of amazing to come across. Because, yeah, does it match? No. But it's still great music, I think. I highly enjoy it. I definitely enjoy listening to it still to this day. Because, yeah, the game really made me realize how bad I am at fighting games. So it was a kind of shock to the system as far as playing games goes, but it's a good one on the ears, depending on the context that you're listening to it.
Again, it's just sort of a bummer that you can't play this game anymore. There's one versus quote-unquote series left that we have not talked about that I don't think either of us have ever played, but from what I hear about the soundtracks, we should probably get to at some point, being the versus SNK series, because those soundtracks are supposed to be phenomenal. But as far as I'm aware, neither of us have ever played a Capcom versus SNK game.
No, much less a Street Fighter Cross Tekken game.
Yeah, also that too, though. That'll be fun to talk about, actually.
Yeah.
We should look into that now that I'm thinking about it.
And the mysterious second game that'll never happen.
Never, ever. But yeah, it's just, for me, I had no idea the soundtrack was so reviled in reviews until you brought it up. Like, wow, that's the most, because I agree, this soundtrack's not bad. It's very good. I also agree, though, it does not fit in a fighting game. But I do think that this is like the middle ground between what we traditionally think of as a fighting game soundtrack and like Skullgirls. Like, I can see Skullgirls coming from this background 100%.
Absolutely. And like, they had the benefit of coming up with new characters, whereas you had all these Street Fighter characters, these Marvel superheroes, where you had previous games that had a sound to them, and Shibata and Takano took a risk on this one. I like it. Not many do. Let's transition to the next game, though, and we'll talk about a fan cover, a fan remix, whether it's from OC Remix, YouTube, wherever it is on the internet. I gotta go back to my guys at J Music Ensemble. And we talked about them in the Persona 5 episode, where there's this startup jazz piece, sort of this ensemble group on YouTube. It worked perfectly for Persona 5, of course, but I'm like, what do they have for Marvel vs. Capcom 2? They have Clock Tower Stage.
Yeah.
And it sounds so good. Hope you enjoy. We'll be right back.
That is some good jazz.
Yeah.
But let's talk about not jazz. Well, actually, one of them is jazz. That's weird. But let's talk about a different game now, being Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. It is the sequel to the original Persona 4 Arena, which released in arcades in March of 2012 with a PS3 and Xbox 360 release following on July 26th, 2012 in Japan, August 7th, 2012 in North America, and May 10th, 2013 in Europe. This episode, so a lot of historical research is about the original Persona 4 Arena, because there's nothing on Ultimax, because it's just Arena with more characters.
Also, a lot of the songs are from Arena.
Yeah, most of the soundtrack is from Arena. It's got some mechanical tweaks here and there, but for the most part, it's kind of just an expansion. It improves upon the original Arena, but it's not that different on surface value. So there's like no development information on that game. It's all on the original. So that's mainly where we'll be talking about. But Ultimax itself was originally released in Japanese arcades in November of 2014, 2 years after the original game, with a PS3 release following on August 28th, 2014 in Japan, and a PS3/360 release on September 30th, 2014 in America, and November 21st, 2014 in Europe. It was also released for just the PS3 on February 17th, 2015 in South Korea. Fun fact, in Japan, Ultimax has the best/dumbest title ever given to a video game, and I wish they would have just kept it in America, because it's the best title ever, because it is called Persona 4, the Ultimax Ultra Suplex Hold.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about that.
It's such a good title.
Wasn't the original Arena title, it was Persona 4, the Ultimate in Mayonaka Arena?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Such better names, and we get Arena and Arena Ultimax.
At least they kept Ultimax. It's a pretty cool word.
Yeah, I guess we should count our blessings on that. Both games were developed and published by Arc System Works and Atlas. So, this is the second ArcSys game that we've talked about on the show, the other being Dragon Ball FighterZ a year ago. And statistically, this is the millionth Persona game, because we've talked about 3, 4, 5, Q.
We talked about 4 really recently, actually.
Yeah, we talked about 4 just a couple weeks ago. This is probably the last Persona game for a while, because I don't know what other one we'll talk about. We'd talk about
Q2.
Q2 is like it. Maybe one day one of us will play Persona 2 or 1. Maybe we'll talk about that too. And eventually, statistically, a Persona 6 will probably happen. But we've talked about a lot of Persona before. But this one's not an RPG. This one is a traditional 2D fighting game, much like Dragon Ball. Though, unlike Dragon Ball and Marvel vs. Capcom, it is not a tag fighter. It is just you pick one character, that's your character. So, the original Arena included a roster made up of almost all of Persona 4's investigation team, as well as 4 characters from Persona 3 and 2 original characters. This is the first time that Persona 3 characters, that the Persona 3 main cast met the Persona 4 cast. In Persona 4, the actual game, they go to Tatsumi Port Island and meet like some side Persona 3 characters, but that doesn't count.
Isn't it like 3 years later? So like the Persona 3 character's like 3 years older or something like that?
I think it's 4? It's somewhere around there.
Yeah.
They're adults. The Persona 3 folks have graduated high school and they're adults now. So, in terms of roster for the original Persona 4 Arena, on the Persona 4 side, you had Yu Narukami, Yosuke Hanamura, Chie Satonaka, Yukiko Amagi, Kanji Tatsumi, Teddy, and Naoto Shirogane, so everybody but Rise, pretty much. From the Persona 3 side, you had Aigis, Mitsuru Kirijo, Akihiko Sanada, and Elizabeth. And for original characters, you had Labris, Shadow Labris, which sounds like they should be the same character with minor differences. Boy, they could not be more different. Shadow Labris is so cool. She has my favorite persona in the entire series, 100%. I was so happy to see her, to see Asterius as a DLC persona in 5. Oh, I was so hyped. Now, Ultimax added almost all of the missing members of both 3 and 4's casts, as well as yet another original character who was there to serve as the main villain. From the Persona 4 side, Ultimax added Rise Kuchikawa, which was weird. It's still kind of weird. And then as DLC, it added Marie, Margaret, and the culprit, who I'm not going to spoil because the game just came out on Steam like a month ago. So some people might be playing for the first time and I don't want to spoil who it is. So that's your warning. Don't go play Ultimax before you have played Persona 4, because it does not care about it is a canonical sequel. It does not care about spoiling it for you.
Absolutely. Yep. Mm-hmm.
On the Persona 3 side, it added Yukari Takeba, Junpei Iori, and Ken Amada as a duo character with Koromaru.
Because he sucks on his own.
Yeah, they needed Ken to be cool somehow, so they put him with the coolest character from Persona 3. And for the original character, they added Sho Minazuki, who actually comes in 2 variations, one with a persona and one without. The roster also includes slightly altered shadow versions of almost every character, from what I was able to gather. Basically, the way they work is they have a lot less defensive options. So they're a lot stronger, but they're also a lot harder to not get your ass kicked with. So it's a very big risk-reward system, basically. For the most part, the arena games play exactly as you would expect from a fighting game, but there are a couple of key differences. The first one being the implementation of personas for the characters that have them. Personas can be summoned for certain attacks, but if your persona is hit by an opponent's attack while it is out, there are some blue cards under your health bar, and one of them will go away. And if your persona gets hit 4 times, your persona will break, and you will be unable to summon it or do attacks that require it for a short period of time, like I don't remember how long it is. I want to say it's like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like much, but in a fighting game, 10 seconds is the difference between life and death. Characters also have SP, much like in their original games, that is depleted as they use special moves. But when a player is low on health, their character will enter their awakening state, where their defense raises and their SP fills back up. It's a really interesting sort of catch-up mechanic. So, the story. I am going to basically sum up the whole story of Persona 4 Arena because it's barely there. And Ultimax is a direct sequel, takes place 6 hours later. So it's very short, and Ultimax is a direct continuation. Persona 4 Arena is set 2 months after the conclusion of Persona 4. 2 months. All that tearful reunion in two months.
Right.
Yu Narukami is returning to Inaba to visit his friends on Golden Week, which is a week-long series of holidays in Japan. That night, when the mysterious Midnight Channel becomes active once again, advertising a martial arts tournament featuring none other than the members of the investigation team themselves, they have no choice but to look into it. Once in the TV world, the team becomes split up and is forced to fight each other in various locations within a strange shadow version of Yasogami High School, being egged on by somebody seemingly posing as Teddy, referring to themselves as General Teddy. They also encounter a strange girl who claims to be their class president at Yasogami High. Meanwhile, 3 members of the Shadow Operatives, the modern form of C's, track a stolen piece of anti-shadow weaponry that appears to have been brought to Inaba and sent into the TV world. As both groups collide, they learn that the, quote, class president's name is Labris, and she is actually the anti-shadow weapon that the Shadow Operatives were looking for. She is a robot in the same vein as Aegis, who uses a big axe. It's really cool. General Teddy is revealed to be Labris' shadow in disguise, but once she is defeated, it is revealed that somebody else entirely has been pulling the strings. Cut to Ultimax. That's literally the whole story of Arena. I just summed it up in less than a minute, I hope. That very night, the Midnight Channel once again goes active, with General Teddy once again appearing and announcing that the end of the world will occur in 1 hour, while showing the Shadow Operatives being crucified, much like they were in Persona 3. Inaba then experiences a blackout as the streets are covered in a dense red fog and are overrun with shadows, and, most importantly, the tower known as Tartarus appears once again. So, what is the goal of this new General Teddy? Why are they targeting both Labris and the investigation team so intently? And what are the motives of the mysterious new entrant into this chaos? A boy named Sho Minazuki. And this is where I will ask, what are your experiences with Persona 4 Arena or Ultimax, or both?
Bought both of them. Honestly, because the versions of the games came with these little bonuses, including these tarot cards.
Yeah.
You could, it was a half a set in each.
Well, there was a half set in Ultimax, and the other half was in Q.
Oh, that's right. That sounds right. So, that was the reason why I got those. It's like, oh, now I have the full set of Persona 4 tarot cards. One of my favorite games of all time. It's a really neat little memento thing to hold on to.
I have both sets as well. They're framed and in my living room.
Yeah, I gotta definitely frame them as well. That's definitely a project to come. But I realized that I'm bad at fighting games, and so when it presented itself as a canonical sequel to Persona 4, I'm like, well, I gotta check out the story. And then I learned that there is an autoplay option. So yeah, let the fights happen, let them autoplay out, and I'll just watch the story. Granted, I don't remember much of the story. It's not that necessary. It's not an essential story. But for the first time when, especially in Arena in 2012, when the characters, some of them from 3, were meeting the cast of Persona 4, it's a cool little mashup.
Especially seeing how they grow up.
Yeah.
Akihiko being this dude that was like, I'm just going to go wander the world fighting people. I love his Persona 4 Arena design.
Yeah.
And you've got Mitsuru in her cat suit with her fencing foil.
She's incredible.
She's so cool looking, and also the worst character to fight.
But then, even in Ultimax, Yukari is dressed up as she's an actress, and Junpei became a baseball coach. And it's cool little things like that. Ken sucks.
Yeah, he sure does. They tried to make him cool. They tried really hard to make Ken cool, and it didn't work.
Oh, the girls love him in his school. No, shut up. Shut up.
I think the story of both of these games put together is very good. The way that Arena handles telling the story sucks, because it's arcade modes. It's just arcade modes with cutscenes.
Yes.
And none of them actually mesh well together, and they all contradict each other, and it's stupid. Ultimax does a little bit better with that, except for you have a Persona 4 side where you experience the story through all the Persona 4 people, and then you have a Persona 3 side, and I was like, oh, cool, so I'll be able to, it's just the same story, which is what I wanted, but 2 different sides of it. No. It's, what if Yu Narukami fought the final boss, and what if Aigis fought the final boss? And it's just kind of disappointing in that way. But I think as a whole, the story is very good. Labris is a very fun character, and it's really fun to play. It was the first time that Arxis tried their hand at simplified controls, which a lot of people don't super like the way that it was handled in Persona 4 Arena, because it is legitimately mash the square button and you will do a full combo. And even I will admit that's a little far. But I play Akihiko because Akihiko is super cool. I also played Mitsuru because she was overpowered for a while. And it's really good and has a really, really good soundtrack. Ooh. And that sprite art, man. That sprite art is so good. They're just really good fighting games that if you enjoy Persona and you want to play some pretty damn good fighting games, Ultimax is a pretty good place to go, all things considered. So let's talk about what made those fighting games possible. Let's talk about what made Arena possible, which in turn made Ultimax possible. So apparently, for a long time, Kazuhisa Wada of Atlus had wanted to take the Persona series and branch out into other genres aside from RPGs. He wanted those characters to show up in other stuff. So he approached the series producer Katsura Hashino and character designer Shigenori Sojima with this thought of hey, what if we put them in a different genre? What if we did something with them in general? And To his surprise, they had also had the same thought. They also wanted that. And then, while talking, they also all three realized that they were all fans of fighting games and decided, all right, that's the one. We're going to make a fighting game. And apparently Arxis was chosen very quickly as who they wanted to make the game because all three of them were also fans of BlazBlue, which is one of Arxis's two big, original fighting game franchises. You have BlazBlue and you have Guilty Gear. Those are their big ones. And the series was well regarded, and the studio also apparently just had a very similar studio culture to Atlus in general. So Arxis was apparently kind of surprised when Atlus approached them with the idea, and they were even more surprised when Atlus was like, yeah, let's make it together. Let's co-develop this game, because they expected it to be like, make a fighting game for us. Here's some money. We'll see you in a year. And it wasn't. They actually sat down, and the Persona team and Arxis began co-developing and collaborating on a fighting game in 2010. And this was the first time that the Persona team had ever closely collaborated with another studio ever. So Arxis handled the main mechanics and the gameplay, while the Persona team worked on the visual design and writing the story, the scenario for the story mode. The game's opening and anime cutscenes were done by animation studio Madhouse, who were chosen after Atlus was impressed by their work on Persona 4 Golden's opening, which I was not actually aware that was Madhouse. So that's interesting. Madhouse made one of my favorite anime in general, so that's cool. Famously, one of my favorite pieces of trivia about this game, Arxis asked Atlus if they could include a duo character of Ryutaro and Nanako Dojima as playable characters, and were promptly turned down. They speculated that this was because those characters were, quote, more obscure in comparison to the main cast, but realistically, guys, it's because they didn't want Nanako taking Akihiko's fist to the face.
Yeah, let's be real.
It's because you asked if you could throw this 10-year-old into the fighting game, and they said, of course they said no. I wish that would have come to be, though, because that would have been absolutely hilarious. And Nanako's great. I love her. She should be in every game. You can actually get her as an announcer in at least one of them.
Probably Ultimax, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could buy different announcers as DLC. Persona 4 Arena had some problems with DLC where they were charging what was it, $10 for, you can put glasses on the characters. And everybody was like, what? No. I'm not going to pay you real world money just to put Yukiko in glasses. That's not how this is going to work. It was bad. It was really bad. Atlus was apparently also very picky about background designs, constantly sending Arxis notes on things they wanted changed. And this apparently resulted in Arena taking roughly twice as long to develop as past Arxis titles. Just the backgrounds alone, according to them, because Atlus would look at backgrounds and be like, nah, change that statue. Nah, change that thing. I don't want that. Which is weird because the backgrounds, they're alright. I remember the music room. That's all I remember.
Oh yeah, the music room. That was a nice one, yeah.
That's the only one I can think of off the top of my head.
The gym?
Was there a gym stage? I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't play it. I had the computer play it.
I think there was a drama room stage? Man, I don't know. They were bland.
Yeah.
They were fine.
Yeah.
Arena is considered a canonical sequel to Persona 4 and was apparently meant to be that from the start. There are references to a spin-off novel about Naoto, apparently, that never came out in America.
Mm-hmm.
And Labris is apparently actually a character that was mentioned in a Persona 3 audio drama. So she is not technically a character made just for Persona 4 Arena. She was. The name was the only thing mentioned as far as I could tell from this audio drama, but apparently Labris was sort of an established thing already. Certain characters' English voices actually changed for the localization of Arena for the first time. Atlus USA says that they tried their very best to bring back the entire original cast, but they've never said why. It's just they mention it as like complications. So Arena marked the first time in which Sam Riegel replaced Dave Wittenberg as the voice of Teddy, and Aaron Fitzgerald replaced Tracy Rooney as the voice of Chie. These voice changes would obviously carry over into Persona 4 Golden, which would release in America 3 months after Arena. So Persona 4 Arena was reviewed rather well upon release. It is currently sitting at a Metacritic of 86. Ultimax, which followed 2 years later, received roughly the same treatment. It's sitting at a Metacritic of 85. And much of the praise for both games was for its fantastic sprite art, which 100% deserved, as well as the animation of said sprites, and also the very in-depth gameplay that the series presents. It's a very fun fighting game. I was just actually listening to Castle Super Beast, and Wooly was talking about it and saying like, yeah, Ultimax is still my favorite like Arxis game that's ever been made. So it's very well loved. Ultimax was even further praised for expanding upon the base that Arena offered, adding even more depth to the experience. Persona 4 Arena won Best Fighting Game at the Spike Video Game Awards, and both games topped sales charts in Japan upon their first week of console release. In terms of legacy, like the success of Arena is largely credited with the fact that Q and dancing exist, because that spinoff did so well that led Atlus to go like, maybe we should be making more spinoffs with our characters.
Especially ones that Nanako gets to be in.
Yeah, which for better or for worse, granted, I don't think any of the Persona 4 spinoffs have been bad. I really like Q. I'm not a huge fan of the gameplay in dancing, but like, that's a good soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd say that largely the legacy of Arena has been great, and I'm very happy that it exists. And that music, we're finally talking about him in Arena, was done by composer Atsushi Kitajoh. We have been sort of holding off talking about him until this game. Originally, he was who I was going to talk about with Persona Q, but then I moved it over to this because he's the only composer in this game. He was born in Tokushima, Japan, and he works for Atlus, and he sometimes goes by Atlas Kitajoh, and he has worked there since about 2007. And that is all the personal information I have on Atsushi Kitajoh, which is really weird because he has worked on a lot of big stuff for Atlus. In terms of his discography, he hasn't always been a composer, and he's not always a composer. He was credited as, quote, a sound creator for Trauma Center New Blood, which, as far as I could tell, was his first gig at Atlus. He was a sound designer on Persona 4, where he is also credited with composing the songs Muscle Blues, It's Showtime, Someone Else's Man, and Calorie Magic? Sure. I don't know what that last one is. He was a sound designer on Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor, a sound director on Trauma Team, which eventually I will talk about that game one day, I hope. He was a sound designer on Persona 3 Portable, as well as the PSP re-release of Persona 2 Innocent Sin. He was a chief sound designer on Catherine. He did the music for Persona 4 Arena and Ultimax, as well as Persona Q. He was an arranger on Persona 4 Dancing All Night, the lead sound designer, and also did some additional composition work for Persona 5. He worked on Persona 3 Dancing in Moonlight and Persona 5 Dancing in Starlight. He worked on Persona Q2, Persona 5 Royal, as well as Persona 5 Scramble, The Phantom Strikers. So this dude has done a lot for the Persona franchise, and there's no information on him. The only person that's done more for Persona in general is probably Shoji Meguro.
Yeah. Honestly, you've probably heard Atsushi Kitajoh's name mentioned in our different Persona episodes, and this is why.
Yeah, he has been closely connected to the series since the original release of 4. So, as for historical development research, the soundtrack has original music by Atsushi Kitajoh, but stage themes are largely based on music by Shoji Meguro. So, let's get into this soundtrack, because this soundtrack is so good, it's so cool, and we're going to start with what I think is the hypest song in either of the games in general, and that is Break Out Of.
Break up.
This is the opening theme of Persona 4 Ultimax. Vocals are by Shihoko Hirata and Lotus Juice, my man. This song is so hype. I think this is one of the most impressive displays of Lotus Juice's rapping abilities that there is. He's going so fast in this song. The closest I can think of where he's going just as fast is maybe like the battle songs in Q. Somebody actually pointed out to me at one point that the lyrics of this song are about you and Sho Minazaki and their conflicting philosophies on life, with Lotus Juice representing Sho and Hirata representing you. Basically, you believes in the bonds between people, giving them power and a reason to live, the social links, if you may, with lyrics like, break out of your fate. Deep down inside you, there lies love in your heart. Meanwhile, Sho hates people, and he believes that things like bonds are stupid, and he wants everybody in the world but him to disappear forever so he can live out the rest of his days completely alone, with lyrics like, only got love for myself, stop your lies. The whole song is just one big hype musical battle between the two of them, so it's super fitting that not only is this the opening theme of the game, this song plays during the final boss between the two of them, where you play as Yu Narukami fighting Sho Minazaki, and it's just a really cool song and a really cool fight, and I love this song, it's so good.
For talking about this game, I'm glad we got to bring it up because this is my favorite, arguably, I'd say the best, opening song of any Persona game, spin-offs, main, period.
I'd agree with that.
This song is incredible.
I would 100% agree with that. I really like Pursuing My True Self, and I really like Shadow World, and like Maze of Life is great. This song kicks the crap out of all of those. But then let's get into some character themes. Get away from the most hype stuff, though. This stuff's still pretty hype. And you know I had to do it. Number 2 is Princess Amagi. This is Yukiko's theme. Look, you know I had to get my girl's theme in there somewhere. But also, I just really like this song. It actually comes down between this and Yosuke's theme for my favorite P4 cast theme. But in general, I think this one sort of barely wins out because it's got this really cool Japanese flair. Like, Yosuke's theme is very electronic and very cool. But like, this one, that violin, the melody, it's really cool. My girl's here to kick some ass, and she's gonna do it with fire and fans and all that. I love it. This is a great song.
Do you remember the 6-track arrangement CD that came out with
yeah.
Arena? Oh, incredible. This one's on there, and both the in-game version and that version are so good. This one definitely had to be in a Critical 5. One of the best character themes for sure.
Oh, I absolutely love it. And while I don't think it's one of the best character themes, it's definitely unique in terms of the rest of the soundtrack. Critical track number 3 is Teddy Circus. As one might guess, this is Teddy's theme. And again, it's not here because it's one of my favorites, but it's so different. Like, everything surrounding it is either hard rock or like electronic. and then it's like, yeah, Teddy gets a jazz theme. And it's really catchy, and it's perfectly fitting for Teddy, to be perfectly fair, being this comic relief weirdo character who, like, fights with a giant baseball bat sometimes, and Teddy's a weird character in that game, like, absolutely bizarre. But I figured this song was worth highlighting because it shows some variety in the soundtrack in general, and sometimes it's very important to point that out.
It also shows how jazz can work in a fighting game.
Fitting for this episode.
Where have we seen that before?
But we gotta pick this hype up. We gotta pick it back up with critical track number 4, and that's Missions for the Brilliant Executioner. This is Mitsuru's theme, and it is by far my favorite of the Persona 3 themes. Like, Akihiko's is very good, and Aigis' we will get to, but as much as I love that song, I wasn't comfortable putting it on the Critical 5 for reasons that we'll get to. I don't know if there's much more to say about this song other than it's incredibly catchy, and it fits My Other Girl perfectly, but you mentioned that 6-track album earlier during the Princess Amagi thing. This, to me, is the version that's on that, the 2K mix. If we can put a little sample of that in here. That's my favorite track on that disc.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's so good.
Especially when it goes in the chorus, like, it gives you, like, good chills all over you.
Oh, yeah. This song is absolutely rad. That version, the bonus tracks version, is actually the first version I ever heard, because when I bought this game and realized that it came with a soundtrack CD, or like a bonus CD, that went in my car immediately. And then I don't think it left for a little while.
Oh, yeah. 6 tracks just repeating. Absolutely. I'm right there with you.
It was such a good CD. I probably have it somewhere still, but where that might be, I don't know. For critical track number 5, this one is one of personal preference, I think, but it's my favorite of the original characters' themes. And that is Shadows of the Labyrinth. This is Shadow Labrys's theme. This one was actually apparently composed by Shoji Meguro, which I did not know. This is, in my opinion, the heaviest, most evil-feeling character theme I have ever heard in a fighting game.
I feel like it almost fits well with Dragon Ball FighterZ.
Oh yeah, kind of. I love Shadow Labrys. She is one of the coolest characters in the game. Asterius is one of the coolest personas that has ever been made. He's this giant bull. He's so cool. And the fact that this shadow has a persona is, A, it doesn't make sense, but B, who cares? It's awesome. And this song absolutely fits her tone. It's a song that's like, she is mean, she's here, and she is going to crush you into a fine powder. Get ready for it. Just that repeating guitar part, the da-dun, dun, da-dun, dun, dun, dun. It's so cool. Absolutely love this song.
And an interesting title, considering what Persona Q would be titled 2 years later.
Yeah, that's a little weird. And actually, I didn't realize that until a couple years ago when I was like, huh, okay. I don't think that was intentional, but it could have been. I don't know. So, for tracks on the cutting room floor, you got 2 of them. Hit me up.
I'm sorry to do more from Persona 4 Arena, but there are just some great tracks. And I'm like, at first, you mentioned Yosuke's theme and Akihiko's theme. I at first put those on there because I'm like, oh yeah, those are great stages. And then I was flipping through and I'm like, oh, we haven't talked about these yet. Let's go with the first one here. This is the Arena stage version. Or if you want to mention its Japanese title, it'd be The Ultimate Stage Edit. This song is so hype. And we talk, again, that 6-track CD opens with such a great version of this song with this opening guitar riff. So intense, so hype. It's really used as like the pre-hype battle music in the story mode. Especially when like General Teddy appears and he's like, oh, ho, ho, you're gonna battle each other. But then when they repurpose it as a stage and it just like amps it up a little bit more, this is definitely a theme that defines this game as a whole.
Yeah, I wish I could have had a spot to put this, but much like Marvel vs. Capcom 3, like this is a soundtrack that is defined by its character themes, because those are what you're going to hear most of the time. But if there was any of the other original songs that were going to go in here, this was definitely probably going to be it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm glad we got that one in there, as well as my other one on the cutting room floor, Best Friends Instrumental. This one is composed by Shoji Meguro, and it is an instrumental version of Arena's opening theme. So we have Breakout of, which is Ultimax's, the sequel's opening theme. This is based off of the original Arena opening theme, which is not as fitting, I don't think, but you give it an instrumental version, you give it this little extra kind of driving grunge to it, and you put it in the main menu. And this is another one that like really identifies the Persona 4 Arena experience. And also important to note that the original opening song for Arena was performed by Yumi Kawamura, who is the vocalist for Persona 3. So they're already hinting at like the 3 and 4 crossover, even in the opening number. Really cool. The song is not, I don't like it as much with the vocals, but again, as an identifiable Arena or Ultimax song, this had to be here for me.
I just can't hear it without thinking of Making a Cup of Rice. Which I don't know if that's... I still to this day don't know if that's the actual lyrics. I'm sure it's not. But in my heart, it always will be. For me, I have 2 songs that are actually remixes from the original Persona 3 and Persona 4, which is the main reason why, while I think that these are 2 of the best versions of either of these songs ever composed, they're not technically from the Arena games. They're from their games, just rearranged. So the first one being Reach Out to the Truth in Mayonaka Arena. Was of course composed by Shoji Meguro. Both of mine were composed by Shoji Meguro originally. This is Yu Narukami's theme, and it is a remix of the original Persona 4 battle theme, because remember, time to make history. technically, well, no, it existed because Golden came out in Japan before this, but it hadn't come out in America yet, so we didn't know what Time to Make History was. So it ups the tempo and intensity, and I will fight anybody that disagrees that this is not the best version of Reach Out to the Truth that has ever been made. Wow, it's so good.
It is. It's the best. Excellent. Good choice.
And speaking of the best version of this song, my other cutting room track is Heartful Cry. This is Icus's theme. It is a remix of the boss theme from Persona 3 FES's The Answer. The only good thing to come out of Persona 3 FES's The Answer. Once again, ups the tempo and intensity. And, oh man, this is, again, the best version of this song. It's just that piano part, man. It's so good. Oh, this song's rad.
Such an amazing song. I'm sorry I had to be on the cutting room floor in Persona 3. Again, because of The Answer when we talked about our Persona 3 episode. And it's on the cutting room floor here. But it does not, sell the song short at all. It's amazing.
Like, the original piece is very good, but I think that this song blows it out of the water. This version is great. So what will I never forget about this game? I think this is my second favorite Arc Sys fighting game, and it's also the second one I've ever played. If Dragon Ball FighterZ didn't exist, this would be my favorite fighting game of all time. In general. Well, under Smash, obviously. But, I don't know, I think I'd hold Dragon Ball a little bit higher than Smash even because Vegeta's in it. It's fantastic. This game rules. It's such a well put together game. It's got a pretty honestly good story, considering it is a Persona story that takes place over the span of like 12 hours. And you have to play 2 games to get most of it. Labris is one of my favorite original characters to be thrown into the Persona 4 universe. And just seeing the Persona 3 characters and where they ended up, I'm a sucker for, in general, media stuff being like, this is where these characters ended up. Like, this is how they grew up. This is where they are now after the end of the story that you watched. I absolutely love that. And to see, like, Yukari is a Power Ranger now. Mm-hmm. Or, like, they think they can make Ken cool now, but they can't. It's just really interesting. And God, where's Persona 5 Arena? So I can see that with the Persona 4 cast. Please don't be a time warp story.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. I think the Arena games are my least favorite out of the Persona 4 spin-offs. But you're right, it's an incredible soundtrack. I'm glad we got to bring it up on the show. It's always good for us to talk about another Persona game. If there's any weird flaw of our shows that we like bringing up Persona too much. But I think it's a good one to bring up. And especially when we're talking about fighting games that had to be done because... yeah, there isn't a fighting game tournament this weekend. There's gonna be. But, we're still gonna put time in our schedule to say, you know what? This is fighting game week. Maybe next year it'll shock us again how another year has passed. So that will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at The Dobaga. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, also at rhymeswithasia.com. But it's that MP3 podcast version that you want. Over on Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. That's also where Joe's other show, Smasherpieces, is hosted. And you can get that and Original Soundchat on podcast services around the globe. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts, including on Spotify, where we have a Spotify podcast feed, but also a Spotify playlist, where if we talk about a song from a video game on this show and it's on Spotify, it's getting added to that big Spotify playlist. Anything getting added this week, Joe?
Last week, we had it real good, and both soundtracks were on Spotify, and this week, to punish us for our hubris, neither of these soundtracks are on Spotify, which is not surprising to either of us, I assume.
I mean, the Persona stuff, that's only in Japan on Spotify. We've talked about this before, but Marvel vs. Capcom, I mean, that's licensing all over, once again. Not too surprising. And then we've got bonus tracks coming your way. We're finally sitting down to record Best of 2018. So that should hopefully be coming your way in the next week or two once it gets edited. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I will be talking about Naoto Kubo.
I will be talking about Joris de Man. All right, Joe, let's play us out.
So, it was actually surprisingly hard to find a cover of a song here. I thought I'd find more breakout of covers, but turns out that song's probably kind of hard to cover, considering you'd need to be Lotus Juice or have the skill approximate of Lotus Juice to do so. But I did manage to find one that I think was pretty cool. It's just like last week you had one that was the song, but somebody playing an instrument over it. I found something very similar with Yukiko's theme, done by KDJ Music 111, Korean DJ, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's cool. And it's a violin cover of Yukiko's theme, so please enjoy that.
Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.